Hello!
Hello!
Alright, now you started correctly. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Gigger.
How are you?
Oh, I'm okay.
This is episode 2 of the Waffle Hour podcast.
Hello, listeners.
We talk about nerd crap, I guess.
Yeah, it's not a very original podcast, but it's ours.
It's not original. We made it. It's ours and no one can take it away.
We just value our opinions so highly, we just wanted other people to listen to them.
I just thought we had funner conversations, personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I do value my opinion.
But isn't it a bit conceited to record those conversations for other people to hear?
Yes, it definitely is. That's an undeniable fact.
It's not going to stop us.
No. I think if you want to be good at podcasting, you just have to accept that you're kind of a dick.
Yeah, I just want listeners to know that I'm introspective enough to know about my conceits.
Good.
So how was your week, Gigger?
It was A-okay. I learned about a new Dungeons and Dragons game system, which I might talk about. I played some Doom Eternal. I also played Slime Rancher.
Slime Rancher?
Yes.
I've never played it. I've only heard pretty good things about it, though.
I love it. How about you, Ben? You tell me about your weekend.
I've been mostly watching stuff, actually. So I watched... I don't know if you knew this, but they recently added a bunch of Studio Ghibli films onto Netflix.
I did not.
But not Netflix US. Only Netflix Canada and other non-US countries.
Of course.
So I watched a bunch of Studio Ghibli films. I also rewatched the movie Clash of the Titans, the original one from the 80s, because that was on Netflix. On the US version, I should add. I watched Hamilton the Musical.
Oh.
Which I don't know if you care about at all.
I know about it.
I've got a few opinions to share about Hamilton. And just before we started recording, I started watching through Avatar.
Oh, good.
That, again, is on Netflix. So yeah, lots of streaming this week. I figured if there's one thing I wind up skipping, probably Avatar, because I only watched a few episodes so far, and I don't have much to say about it.
Fair.
But I want to talk about Studio Ghibli. I want to talk about Clash of the Titans a lot. And I don't know if I'm qualified to talk about Hamilton, but I kind of want to talk about Hamilton.
Well, my vote is Studio Ghibli, because I know about all the Studio Ghibli films. I love them. Pretty much. And I also quite recall last week you said you hated anime.
I did. I did say that. So we should probably undress that comment.
Yeah, probably.
Well, okay, so you might have gotten that I don't actually hate anime, but my relationship to anime is pretty complicated. What I guess I actually hate are just people who claim to like anime. Because, I know, that's a weird way of putting it. I don't even mean anime fans, but just, I don't see the point in distinguishing anime from other animation. Mm-hmm. There's good and bad Western animation, there's good and bad Japanese animation. But being an anime-specific fan is stupid, because, I mean, maybe it's just all the anime fans I've known my entire life, but all of them seem to just watch lots and lots of anime regardless of whether it's good or bad, and so much of it just seems fucking bad to me.
Well, I would point out, I do think there is a point in distinguishing.
Okay.
Not because you're not wrong. You're completely right. There's good animation, there's bad animation. The issue is that the Western animators very, very rarely ever attempt to tackle the same themes or concepts as the Japanese.
I would point out to those anime fans that you obviously aren't up to date on a lot of Western cartoons. I mean, it helps that many of them are very anime-inspired, but especially modern day cartoons, this current Renaissance era we've gone through, starting with Adventure Time and Gravity Falls, and what was the other big one? Steven Universe, and there's another really new popular one right now, but I can't remember the name of it because I don't actually watch all of these. She-Ra's really good.
I know you like She-Ra. I can't remember another popular one besides Adventure.
But there's lots of them. I mean, half of them are made by the studio that made Avatar.
Yes.
Which is the most anime inspired.
I think you're not wrong. A lot of good Western animation Absolutely, and a lot of those ones do tackle themes that, like, Teen Titans wouldn't, maybe.
Yeah.
But my point is
Well,
that
Teen Titans was a little sillier, but it had its serious moments too.
my
Or
point
do you
is
mean
that
Teen Titans Go?
I mean Teen Titans. 'Cause
Okay.
I'm thinking of that's exactly my point. Is Teen Titans had a lot of levity, even though they also had like Slade in that whole area, or Raven's father.
Mm-hmm.
Those are arcs. But I'm talking about there's no cartoons that aren't comedies that are directed toward adults. And there's a lot of anime that is, like Steins Gate, for example.
I think it's more that a lot of the Western animation, it's not necessarily targeted at adults, but it's made with the intention of adults watching it too. In
It's
fact,
made
you
with the
could,
intention of everyone watching.
yeah, well, you could almost say that it is adult-oriented, just child-appropriate. That seems to be their like predominant strategy nowadays.
In some instances, absolutely, like Steven Universe and Adventure Time. But
Yeah.
Gravity
Maybe not-
Falls, I would argue, would not be that.
I disagree. Gravity Falls is probably the most serious out of all of them.
See, I have to say I've only watched the first season because I couldn't find the second at the time.
Second season's so good.
I'm planning on watching the whole thing again. But from at least the first season's perspective, there were a lot of instances it was very based around the two kids, main twins.
Yeah,
which
and
is
it's very
fine.
episodic.
But even still, like, the themes would tackle with them. And there's themes you can't really tackle with children, like in Steins Gate, which I don't know if you've seen or not or heard anything about.
No, that doesn't ring a bell to me.
Steins Gate, there's a whole point
Is
where...
that an anime?
Yes.
Okay.
There's an entire, like, section where a character... this is kind of spoilers if you know about it,
Spoilers, people.
but I'm not going to say any names.
We do spoilers on this podcast. We don't even mark where they're going to be either, so it's not like you can skip ahead of easily.
Should I do that now?
I mean, maybe.
I will.
That seems like more effort than I'm willing to put in.
Steins Gate, there's a whole section of the story where they do a Groundhog Day style thing, where a character just keeps dying over and over and over again.
Okay.
And I don't think you can really present that in the same way in a Western cartoon in the same capacity because of how limited they are. Like, death and other things of those natures you can't tackle as well, which I'm not saying is necessarily a requirement. I'm just pointing out that that is a distinction between the two.
The thing is that, like, Western... I don't know about, like, death. I feel like death is kind of a broad thing to claim that Western cartoons do or don't tackle. But they do tackle stuff that's, like, shockingly adult. Like, sexuality, abuse, trauma.
Well, they're often doing those in the context of someone's going through those things. Like, in Adventure Time, when Finn talks about how he's interested in Princess Bubblegum, but also she's not interested in him, and there's a whole dynamic there, like very early in.
Yeah.
That's in the context of he's a kid, and these are new emotions for him to kind of go through.
Yeah. But in Adventure Time, he does age in real time along
Yes.
with the voice actor. So by the end of the series, he's like, what, 17 or something like that?
I don't know. I didn't finish it.
Well, I did, but I don't remember how old he would have been. It's not something they ever draw attention to in the show. It's just implied that he is growing older as the series goes on. And they also have, like, subjects that are a lot more complicated, too. Especially, Adventure Time goes, like, kind of off the rails
I've
in its
heard.
content. Like, especially later on. Like, some episodes are just bizarre, like, avant-garde kind of explorations of, like, art and shit like that, and it's like, wow, I don't even know what the creators of the show were trying to do at this point. I just think that they knew they could get away with anything they wanted. Because a few of them, I'm like, kids are just going to find this boring.
Yeah.
So, back to Studio Ghibli, though, specifically.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because we're just kind of waffling about anime. I don't actually hate anime, but I don't like most anime, and I'm always wondering about anime that I may or may not like, but I never really take the time to bother finding out. I think I might like JoJo's if I watch it. It seems like a fun enough show,
I have no idea.
but I wouldn't know
I love
until
JoJo's.
I actually do it.
JoJo's is one of my favorites. I didn't think I would like JoJo's.
Yeah. Well, I know that JoJo's has, like, a pedigree. It's a very, very long-running, very, very important, influential series, and I'm attracted to that kind of thing. It's one of the reasons I enjoyed Berserk as much as I did. And, I loved Berserk, that's an anime, and I loved the manga, because I read all all of the Berserk manga. I've been actually rereading that, but not enough to talk about it. So obviously it's clear I don't actually hate anime. It's just I'm not an anime fan. I don't consider myself an anime fan. I don't take people who do consider themselves anime fans seriously. I'm coming off as really shitty and pretentious, aren't I?
I mean, I agree with you as an anime fan is the thing. Because I know exactly what I like about anime, and I know that I don't like most of it.
I think it's also unfair to anime fans to, like, talk about them that way. Because there is a disparaging nature to it, so many, like, anime fans are quick to, like, label themselves as weebs and joke about how dumb their hobby and pastime is, which... no, just, like, own it. You have a thing you love, and that's a good thing.
Well, there's the old meme of, so there's, like, it's an anime, so there's a girl in a river, and there's it's labeled anime fans, and above her is two people laughing. One of them is regular people, the other is other anime fans.
Exactly. That's a bad attitude to have.
But,
it's an unhealthy one, you know?
I guess from my perspective, it's just that, when I think about anime... the one thing I am pretentious about is anime. I know the good ones. I like the good ones. Anything else, I don't give a shit about.
Okay.
Like if you tell me about like Sword Art Online, I don't like Sword Art Online. I will not watch Sword Art Online.
I don't even know about anime or Sword Art Online. Well, I know that Sword Art Online is actually bad. It's super popular, but it's actually bad.
It's terrible. For those who don't know, Sword Art Online is an anime about a kid. It's the first one about the kid who gets trapped in a video game world.
Okay.
It was the first popular one.
There's a bunch of sequel series to it, and it's like different video games, right?
To my understanding, I don't pay attention to it because I don't like it.
You watch that first one, you're like, nope, I'm out.
I watched some of it, and I was like, I need to not. And that's kind of put me off that whole genre, which is upsetting. Izeki, I think it's called. You wouldn't know. But I think that there's a lot of good anime. And I think there's an anime for every person. It's just so hard to find, and sort of convince people who don't want to watch it. Like I have a friend who, and I know we're waffling way past the Studio Ghibli thing, but to bring it back a little,
so far away. To
bring it back to that, one of my friends, Ben, the other one, I don't want to say his last name, but the blonde hair.
Ben that isn't the Ben that you're talking to right now.
I'm trying to make you remember him.
Just do Ben initial.
Ben H.
Ben D.
Ben H.
Ben H. Okay.
He talked about how he doesn't like anime because he's like a kind of a preppy dude.
I like Ben H a lot.
He's great. He's one of my favorite people, but he is a preppy guy.
Yeah.
He talks about how he doesn't like anime, and he was asking me one time, he's like, "Is Studio Ghibli really anime?" And I was like, "Yes, of course it's anime."
Yes, it is anime.
Because he really didn't want to be labeled. He liked Studio Ghibli movies, but he didn't want to be labeled as an anime fan.
Okay, Studio Ghibli. Spirited Away is one of my favorite movies of all time.
I love it. I think Nausicaa Valley of the Wind is better.
Wow, that's not what I would have expected, because I think Nausicaa is actually one of the weaker Studio Ghibli films.
I disagree. I really liked it. I liked a lot of aspects of it.
I haven't rewatched it. I will just because you said that. But for me, the number one is Spirited Away. Number two is Princess Mononoke, and Princess Mononoke has been inching farther up every time I've watched it. I adore that film, and I adore it more every time I see it. I didn't even like it the first time I watched it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but it's just like it grows on me. So I watched 3 Studio Ghibli films recently. I watched 2 that I have never seen before, which were Kiki's Delivery Service and Porco Rosso.
Those are both really good.
And then I've rewatched Princess Mononoke again, this time introducing it to a few of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's just talk about all 3 and then end this Studio Ghibli discussion.
I was gonna request that you state your top 3, and I can state my top 3.
Okay, well, my top 3 would be Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, and I don't actually know if I have a third. All of them.
Howls?
No, Howls is like kind of weak.
How about
There's lots I love about Howls. I love that castle, but
oh my god, I've forgotten the name. Beneath the Steel Sky. Nope, that's a video game.
yeah, that's not one. I liked Castle in the Sky a lot.
Castle in the Sky is the one I'm thinking of.
I actually remember specifically watching Nausicaa and Castle in the Sky pretty close to one another. Nausicaa I watched first, and then Castle in the Sky I watched second, and I remember liking Castle in the Sky more.
For me, it's Nausicaa, Howls, and then Kiki's Delivery Service.
You know what? Kiki's Delivery Service might actually be the third one now that I've seen it. I just
It's
didn't want to consider it
so
because it's
good.
such a recent thing. So yeah, let's talk about that first. Kiki's Delivery Service. That was the first of the three I watched, and I love it.
It's
I love it
amazing.
so much.
It's so cute.
It's so how do I put it? Like, it's a feel-good movie. It is
Explain
a comfort
what it
movie.
is.
So, okay, in Kiki's Delivery Service, it's about a young girl. She's 13, I believe.
That sounds about right.
Her name is Kiki, and she is a witch. And as part of her witch training, she's got to go off on her own to a completely different city, away from her home village and away from her parents, to just be independent, I guess. She doesn't have, like, witch training. She doesn't, like, find a new master or anything like that. She just has to be self-sufficient, I guess.
Yes.
And so she goes to this city that kind of reminds me of Amsterdam. I think that was the major inspiration for it, but it's also got a lot of, like, anachronistic, a lot of mixed culture, mixed time period kind of things in it.
Yes.
And there really isn't much of a plot. There's no, like, real conflict. There's some towards the end, but it's mostly about, like, this girl. She loves flying on her broomstick, and she does this delivery service because she can fly, and she loves doing that. But even though she loves it, it's still, like, being interdependent and doing this thing and having these responsibilities. It still stresses her out.
Yes.
And that would be the conflict. Like, near the end of the movie, she gets to a point where, spoilers, she, like, loses her powers, or she thinks she's lost her powers, and mostly it's just, like, a stress thing. And then she has to get her powers back, like, right before the finale. But, yeah, it's a low-stakes, good-feeling movie, like I said. And, God, that city is just gorgeous. I want to live there.
What I love about it is I just love anime that's cute.
Yeah.
I love it because there's so much anime I've watched when I was younger was like stuff like
Well, Dragon Ball Z is the thing that comes to my mind. I mean, maybe that was when I was younger, because that was still, like, the first anime that people started latching onto.
I watched that when I was a kid, but I'm talking about, like, when I was in, like, middle school and in high school. That stuff like Baccano. Baccano is a very bloody anime.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much stuff. There's a whole section about a dude who gets caked on with blood.
So what you're talking about is, because to a lot of people, anime is adult and violent and
Yes.
action-oriented.
And I love it when they go the opposite direction.
Yeah, and there is that entire genre of anime that seems to go mostly ignored.
Hamtaro.
Well, yeah, Hamtaro. Man,
I've never actually seen Hamtaro.
I have. It's really boring.
Yeah.
Or
I
maybe
would
it was
assume.
just boring to, like a little boy, which is what I was when it was on television. But anyway, yeah, Kiki's Delivery Service. Delightful. I love it. I highly recommend it. Probably my third favorite Studio Ghibli film now.
Kiki's Delivery Service is a lot like the show Witch something.
I have no idea.
Ah, crap.
Is that an anime or?
It's an anime. It's on Netflix. I'm gonna have to Google it.
Okay.
I apologize.
You know what my brother who I watched the film with, he loved the film and he really wanted me to see it. He was saying he wanted to make a Kiki's Delivery Service inspired video game where the purpose is just that you live your life in this very nice town and you have a reason to, like, go out and meet, like, all these different people, and it'd just be kind of like a day-to-day survival kind of thing. And I agree, that would just be delightful.
Like,
Did you find the name?
crap. You just said
Little
Witch
Witch
Academia. How do you know? Did you see my phone?
No, I didn't see your phone. I just suddenly remembered that there is an anime with that title that I've seen referenced to things online on forums and stuff.
I think Little Witch Academia is what Kiki's Delivery Service. It was not what it was trying to be, but I think it became a thing because of Kiki's Delivery Service.
That's possible.
Because there's so many things that are inspired about it.
So it's a series, though, right?
It started off as a short, actually, but then it became a series after Netflix picked it up.
I might check that out if you're recommending it.
It's very cute, and it's very much like, little girls enjoying going to a witch school and having troubles because the main one can't use magic at all.
So why is she in the witch school?
Because she desperately wants to be a witch, and she's not letting the fact that she can't use magic for some reason
stop her.
Yes.
Okay.
And you learn eventually why she lost her magic and how that happened and everything. It's a really good one. I really enjoyed that one. and I tried to get my little sisters to watch it because I thought they would love it, and they hated it.
Oh,
I was really upset.
I bet. Maybe when they mature a little bit.
This was made for you!
That's the thing. I'm not convinced that it is.
Probably not, but I don't know.
Okay, so the second one I watched, keep on topic, we're not going to be on this for too long. The second one I watched was Porco Rosso.
I fucking love Porco Rosso.
Porco Rosso I was a bit disappointed in, if I'm going to be honest. Maybe it's just because it followed Kiki's Delivery Service, which I really, really liked. But Porco Rosso felt to me... Okay, so for listeners who've never seen it, the premise is that there is... It's like a pre-World War II kind of setting, but it's got some fantastical elements in that there are sky pirates and bounty hunters.
Yes.
And stuff like that. Like, the sky pirates will raid on ships in their seaplanes, and Porco Rosso is a bounty hunter who... chases them down and gets the stuff that they steal back, basically. And this is how he makes his living. And the big twist beyond the really cool adventure setting itself, the big twist is that he's a pig.
Yes.
Everyone else is a regular human, but he is an anthropomorphic pig. Apparently, because of a curse.
Yeah, I was going to say, he didn't start off as a pig.
But, okay, what really bothered me the entire film was that being a pig was very incidental to the entire story. Like, he pretty much, the only thing that it ever came up was that he would just use it to, like, randomly justify his shitty behavior. Sometimes someone would, like, say he's being a bit of an ass. He's like, well, what do you expect? I'm a pig. That kind of thing.
I don't know enough about this topic, but I know that there is a big difference in Japanese culture as opposed to American culture about pigs and certain animals, and that's why they show up in Studio Ghibli's films so often.
Yeah, but I don't think even that matters. Maybe it was like a symbol.
That's my assumption.
But the movie was not about him being a pig. The movie was about him. His airplane breaks. He has to take it to like the original designer, and the designer's like granddaughter is the one that winds up working on it. And he's a bit sexist, and he doesn't want her to do it, but she turns out to be awesome at what she does. And it's a very fun adventure movie, and it's also a very funny movie, like really funny. I keep calling them space pirates because I'm, used to that terminology more than sky pirates.
Yeah.
But okay, the sky pirates are absolutely hilarious. You can't hate these guys. They're the bad guys, but they're so comical and they're so like good-natured. Like they meet the mechanic girl and they just love her instantly.
I think that maybe I'm misremembering. It's been a while since I've seen it, but they reminded me of the evil troop of people in the what are they called? The DuckTales. Do you know
the Beagle Boys?
The Beagle Boys. That's what they reminded me of, but it's more charming.
Here's a fun thing, and I considered bringing this up, but I didn't know if you'd care or not. So, the animation studio that made DuckTales also made Duck Dodgers and not the Rescuers, Chippendales Rescue Rangers.
Yeah.
And they also made a show called Tailspin.
But it's about Flapjack. Not Flapjack.
It's about Baloo the bear from
Oh, right.
Okay, well, here's the thing about Tailspin, is that it's got a very similar setting. It's that whole, like, sky pirates thing, and, like, Baloo is, like, a delivery man, and he delivers his packages via seaplane, but he's being chased off by sky pirates.
I'm sorry, I just forgot that it existed.
Yeah, I know, it's a weird premise, and it's weird that they use Jungle Book characters to fill this premise, but whatever, old Disney Channel, it's awesome. The funny thing is that I was wondering why these two things are similar, and if they're both references to the same thing, and they actually are. But the thing that they're both references to are the original manga that was written by Miyazaki that Porco Rosso is based on.
Really?
Yeah, Porco Rosso was originally a manga. He made it into a movie, and Tailspin was based on that manga.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. And I like Tailspin a little bit more, and I like Porco Rosso, but like I said, I was just a bit disappointed because, like, the pig thing kind of just annoyed me. There was one really good emotional scene I won't spoil, but that was it. It was mostly just a humorous movie.
For me, I think that what I loved about it is the obsession that he shows in that and in Castle in the Sky with air battles and air raids.
If you hadn't noticed, Miyazaki's just obsessed with flying.
He is, and I in other movies it's like far harder. Like in
I think Kiki's Delivery Service is the movie about flying.
Well, it's about flying. It's about the concept of flying. It's not about flying in an airplane.
not an airplane specifically, but it's just like an excuse to have flying all the time.
But I think that I found it really
Even more
interesting.
than Porco Rosso, which is about a guy piloting an airplane, funnily enough.
I found it very interesting when he, all the close-ups and showing the people running around the airplanes, them jumping onto other airplanes. In those two movies, I watched those two like back to back because I was watching all of them, including Grave of Fireflies, which I do not recommend.
That's not Miyazaki. That's just Studio Ghibli, right?
It might be. I thought it was Miyazaki.
I don't think it is. Because there's a lot of Studio Ghibli films that he did not specifically write or direct.
Well, to my understanding, it was that one was around the time when he was around.
Yeah,
So it makes sense to me that he would do it.
I don't think he did, though. We
Maybe.
can look that one up later, or maybe one of our 2 listeners will correct us.
We've had 12 listens.
12?
Yeah, there's 12 views.
Bullshit.
I'm not
I
kidding.
didn't share it with anyone.
Okay.
Okay, that's a different subject.
Yes, what was I just talking about?
Wow, 12 viewers.
Stop.
Okay, we were talking about Porco Rosso. We were talking about Grave of the Fireflies. You were talking
Yes.
about Sky
I
Pirate
just love that.
battles.
I love that a lot when I watched both of those movies. That like, I love just seeing that fascination on screen. You know, like when someone tells you something they're so interested in, and you aren't at all. But the fact that they're so hyped up and love it so much, it just makes it enthralled to you.
I've had that happen a lot, but it is not always a surefire thing. Sometimes people are just passionate about things that I will never care about.
100%. 100%. Like when Silas tells us about Slay the Spire.
I'm looking forward to that.
I really wanted to talk about it at length, but in the movies they do it really well in my opinion. Of me making me want to learn more and see everything, and I was really intrigued by it.
I want to see more stories set in that kind of like sky pirate setting. It's just so cool.
Howl's Moving Castle, technically.
Kind of, not really. I was just thinking like in Star Wars. I'm sorry, listeners. In Star Wars, I love the concept of the smugglers and the bounty hunters. Like, that's my favorite thing.
Oh, you never got the chance to make your Star Wars game.
What Star Wars game?
Star Wars Underworld.
Oh, that's a different topic. But I love that concept the most, and I was trying to imagine it in a fantasy setting and not a space one. And like smugglers on ships, not as cool. They're just not slow. You don't have like crazy dogfights and
smugglers on airplanes, however.
Exactly.
So good.
Okay, so yeah, love both of these movies, but I like Kiki's Delivery Service significantly more than I like Porco Rosso.
I really gotta rewatch Nausicaa now. I don't know why I like it so much.
Well, it is on Netflix Canada.
I mean, I have them.
Oh, that makes sense. Anyway, so the third one I watched was Princess Mononoke.
Tell us about that, Ben.
I fucking adore Princess Mononoke so much.
I mean, I don't hate it.
I'm surprised
definitely
you're
not my favorite.
like so tepid over it.
For me, it's one of the ones I've always felt was overrated. Including, I know that everyone says Spirited Away is overrated. And I don't entirely agree.
I don't agree with that at all. Spirited Away is definitely just...
A lot of people think it's really overrated, and I don't really agree.
They can eat my ass.
Princess Mononoke, though, I think it's a little overrated.
So the thought I had this most recent watch through Princess Mononoke, because I've seen the movie probably dozens of times now.
Yeah.
Is, you know how when you're listening to music, a song that you like really like, and you get to that moment that you really really like, that drop almost. Well, this is actually a scientific thing people have studied, but like when that happens, when someone is listening to music, there's a dopamine response where they literally have a pleasure being induced in their brains because of the music. And the thing is that you can't just skip straight to that good part of the song. You need to have a little bit of build-up anticipation for it, and that's how it works. And that is exactly what Princess Mononoke is for me. Like, I just get to those, like, certain scenes, and I have that fucking dopamine release where I'm like, oh god, this is so good. I just love this so much. Usually it's, like, when that music, because the soundtrack is so good, but it's when the music, like, swells in the movie, it's like, god, yes, I love this film. It's so cool.
I definitely think there are a lot of things that are very, very good at it. It's definitely one of the better ones. One of the best, if not. It's just, for me, it just doesn't do it for me as much as other stuff.
So, listeners, if you are not familiar with Princess Mononoke, which it is one of the more well-known ones, so it's more likely you might know it than Kiki's Delivery Service or Porco Rosso.
Yeah, definitely.
It's that, It's a fantasy story, like a fantasy epic, about a prince of like a Japanese tribe who is touched by like this demon creature, and his arm gets like possessed by some sort of evil.
Yes.
And it's a curse that's on him that it's going to kill him eventually, and he's trying to find a way to cure it by going to find the source of the demon's anger and hatred and stuff like that. And it turns into a big anti-war film because it turns out the demon was originally like a forest god that was at war with a human settlement that was
It's more
destroying its forest.
anti-industrial.
Anti-industrial, anti-war. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in my head it's more anti-industrial than anti-war.
Man, you should rewatch this movie.
I did recently.
Well, you should rewatch it with me.
Like I understand that there's a war going on. That's a huge deal, and but that's like between the humans.
There's
more.
such a strong anti-hate message that
That's
eyes
definitely
unclouded
true.
by hate thing is repeated like over and over in that film.
just clouding of your vision to not see. You know the old saying, "You can't see the forest for the trees."
Mhm.
That's like represented in this movie beyond belief. Like when the hunter is so intent on getting the forest spirit's head that he goes through such absurd like ranks and
Yeah,
means to do it, all because he can't see that what he's doing is going to be harmful.
I think he sees it. He just doesn't care.
I mean, maybe at the end, but for me, at least when I was watching it last, it seemed like he at first didn't see it.
See, I love the that's kind of a spoiler, and I don't even want to like spoil this movie because I love this movie so much.
I don't think you can spoil this movie, honestly.
Well, the fact that that particular character is a bad guy is not obvious when he's introduced. He's actually introduced as a pretty friendly, like almost NPC style character, and then he just kind of shows up later at the end. It's like, oh, he's actually a bad guy.
For me, when I first watched it, I just felt like there was something weird about him, and then he showed up, and I was not surprised.
See, I love him. He's so cool.
Okay.
Here's a spoiler. He's voiced by Billy Bob Thornton, and his voice acting just does such a good job of combining this kind of like super charming but kind of slimy way of like this personality.
Studio Ghibli's like voice acting is the best in the business
That's
because
because-
it's done by Disney.
Yeah, Disney. The reason why Studio Ghibli has been so successful in America is because they've had all the advantages.
Sai in Spirited Away is voiced by the person who did Lilo in Lilo and Stitch.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
She is. If you watch it again right now, knowing that, you'd be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I didn't tell."
I really, really do like the politics of Princess Mononoke a lot because it works very hard on making every single character at least a little bit sympathetic.
Yes,
Any character that
every
appears
single
on
one.
screen, like the nameless emperor is a bad guy that you never get to see. Lord Hisano is like an evil warlord that is a person who's important in the background, but he's not in the movie. But meanwhile, like the main bad guys, Lady Hiboshi and
Yes.
Chigo, like even though they are bad people, they still have like good things about them. Lady Hiboshi especially, because
Yes.
she employs brothel girls to get them out of prostitution. She helps lepers, stuff like that. She's just this beloved community leader, but she is also
She's doing it at the behest of the forest.
yeah, she's single-mindedly trying to advance her town by destroying the forest and all that stuff. Meanwhile, like the forest spirits are not like entirely good. They're
No.
kind of violent and
Rude
like,
at the very minimum.
they're very rude often.
But it's like you understand when you're watching it that this isn't a black and white issue.
But at the same time, and I think this is something that it took me a long time to really like dwell on and realize, even though it's got good people on both sides, there is a right and a wrong side.
Yes,
And it comes
definitely.
down very hard on that. It's like, no, environmentalism is important. Deforestation is bad. War is bad. The cycle of violence is bad. Just because you're a good person doesn't mean you can't be responsible for really bad things.
Yes, and you can't just because you can justify your actions doesn't mean you're doing positive actions.
It's a very important takeaway for me. There's a
I'd agree.
fantastic YouTube video I'd recommend by Innuendo Studios, and it's just called Lady Hiboshi is Wrong. And it's just like a very quick explanation of what we just said, but in more eloquent terms. I'm not recommending it to you, you already know. I'm recommending it to listeners.
I would like to apologize if you can hear me drinking out of my soda. I have an ulcer on the bottom of my tongue and it hurts.
They didn't need to know that.
No, but I don't like it. I know they can hear it. I don't want them to be like, oh, he's being mean.
There's going to be random background sound effects.
I also like to explain.
Yeah.
I like being transparent.
Fair enough.
Don't watch Tales from Earthsea.
I wasn't planning on it. That's the one by Miyazaki's son, isn't it?
I think it's the first one, and he didn't do a very good job.
I heard Miyazaki himself was very critical.
The main problem is that he adapted it from a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tales of Earthsea. It's a famous fantasy novel.
He didn't...
Novel series?
When you watch it, if you haven't read the novel, you have no idea what the fuck's going on.
I have no idea what the fuck's going on in a lot of Miyazaki films, but typically I'll figure it out.
Yes.
Princess Mononoke.
You'll figure it out.
So, funnily enough, Princess Mononoke, the very first time I saw it, I was actually a very young child.
Yes.
I didn't finish it. I was watching a friend's house with my older brother. We were like dog sitting, and we're just living at their house. And we had the DVD, and it was something that my friend's mother had like recommended, but she hadn't seen it. She just saw like bits and pieces, and she knew it was beautiful, and she knew her sons liked it. And when we watched it, we got to that super violent scene where he shoots the guy's arms off with his arrow, with the demon-possessed arm.
Yes.
And as a little kid, I'm like, I don't think I should be watching this. I'm not old enough for this. And we just shut it off.
That's
But
funny.
even then, like, later on, I watched it and I was like, this is fine. I'm a little confused as to what's going on, but I like the animation. The animals talking seems silly. And now after, like, watching it a dozen times, I'm like, I just love this movie. I love the voice acting. I love the music. I love this scene. I love that scene. It's so good. It's so perfectly made. And, like, I keep on thinking, like, I always maintain Spirited Away as being the better film, but, man, Princess Mononoke, it just gets higher every time. I just love it so much.
Well, do you get that same feeling when you watch Spirited Away? Does it get higher every time you watch it?
No, it's always been at the top. It's just, it's never lowered. It's just always been, like, as good as an animated movie could be, in my mind, almost.
My point was, wasn't about, like, you can't, if you watch it without reading it, you have no idea what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't at any point, unless you've read it.
Oh, Earthsea, yeah.
Yes, Earthsea.
Sorry, I went on.
You really love Princess Mononoke, I can tell.
I really do. I'm very disappointed that you're, like, not as excited about it as I am.
I don't know, maybe I'll have to watch it again. I don't think it's going to change. I don't know what it is about it that I'm not, like, overtly, like, amazed by it every time I watch it.
I think it might be Miyazaki's only movie that isn't about flying. Or doesn't have, like, a significant flying scene.
Maybe. It's probably...
Like, even Spirited Away has the part where she's riding on the dragon.
What was his last movie, do you know?
His last movie was The Wind Rises. It was about a guy who designed airplanes.
What was the one before that one?
It was Ponyo.
Ponyo has no airplanes.
That's just true.
I wasn't sure if he did
flying.
that or his son did.
He did that one.
Okay. Ponyo is all about the sea.
Ponyo, I think, is not that great. Gorgeous, but, like, whatever.
I love it, but I definitely wouldn't say it's... I wouldn't, like, recommend it as the first watch.
What were your top three again?
Nausicaa. Oh, crap, I forgot. I think the second one was Howls, and then Kiki's.
So when I watched Princess Mononoke with I had two friends who had not seen it before and one friend who had. And it's funny because the one friend, he had brought over Porco Rosso to watch as well, but I pointed out that I had literally watched it that day.
Yeah.
So we didn't wind up watching it just because I had just seen it. But we were talking about it a lot, and he kept on accusing Nausicaa of just being a proto Princess Mononoke. Like, just being, like, the not as good first draft of the same story.
What?
I didn't agree with that either, but I find it interesting that, like, it's kind of... This reminds me of when I've argued with my brother Alex about Reservoir Dogs versus Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
In which he likes Reservoir Dogs better. And to me, that is what I would describe it as. The rough first draft of the better movie, which is Pulp Fiction. Because they're so similar in certain tones and aspects and messages and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I just think Pulp Fiction is the better movie for it. But I wonder if your, like, attitude towards Nausicaa, which I haven't seen Nausicaa in a really long time. I know it's very anti-industrialization, anti-war, just like Princess Mononoke is.
I haven't seen it in a while either. I'll have to watch it again. I don't think that makes sense to me, because I think that the way they tackle it in Mononoke is completely different from how they tackle it in Nausicaa. Again, I haven't seen it in years now, so I'll have to check.
Mm-hmm.
But immediately I'm like, no.
It just talking to you about this now reminds me of that discussion I had with Alex back then. You know,
I don't think I've finished Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs is a decent enough movie.
I didn't know that was before Pulp Fiction.
It was his first film.
Was
Or
that
his first big film.
That's the one with the colored, not the colored, the men who
They
run
have the
bank,
different names
and they do colors.
named after colors, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I watched half of that.
It's a jewel heist, but you don't see the jewel heist, you just see
Steve
like the
Buscemi's
after
in
effects.
it.
Steve Buscemi's in a lot of Tarantino's movies, I think.
Yes.
Actually, I can't think of any others he's in.
I was about to say. I agree.
He's
with
in a
you.
lot of Coen Brothers movies.
He's in a lot of Adam Sandler movies.
Is he?
He's in Big Daddy and
I remember
Happy
him.
Gilmore.
I remember him in Happy Gilmore because I remember the scene where he puts on the lipstick.
I was thinking of the scene. Oh no, this is Mr. Deeds. He's Mr. Deeds. That's the one I'm thinking of.
I'm confused and I hate this discussion. We're waffling very hard. So let's just we're done talking about Studio Ghibli. We'll admit to that. When we're talking about Adam Sandler movies, we're definitely done talking.
We can't
about
go back.
So how about you tell me what you've been doing lately, and then just let's change subjects.
What specifically do I want to talk about? I guess I'll talk about Five Torches Deep, which is going to be the most complex one. Because now I have to explain what that is.
Yeah, Five Torches Deep. It's a tabletop RPG rule set.
Yes. It's
one that I, listeners, am already familiar with.
I'm very familiar with it, sir. It's very similar to Dungeons and Dragons with the intent of being simpler.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another one similar to this called Knave, which is even simpler than this. This is like in between 5th edition of Dungeons and Dragons and Knave. There are classes, there are races, and there's a lot of new mechanics and ways to do things. Lately, I've been experimenting with the Rubik's Cube method of creating a map that the game made.
You're going to have to explain for our listeners what that even means.
So
you might even have to go farther back and just talk about like map making in general.
Yeah, I knew this was going to be difficult.
It's easy to talk about a movie. It's even easy to talk about anime, but like I can't count on our listeners knowing about
you're 100% right.
Stuff.
My problem is I just like
the other 12 listeners.
The other stuff I can't think about is stuff that the stuff I'm thinking about is stuff that like I don't really know if I can talk that much about. Like Doom Eternal, I don't have much to say about it.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, map making in D&D, when you're creating a map for your players to play on, the thought process is to create an entrance, things for them to find inside, say, a dungeon, and then an exit or a reward.
It's like a combination of like game design and storytelling, story writing.
Yes. In this specific version, they utilize a Rubik's Cube and the different colored faces of the Rubik's Cube, the different colored segments, to create different kinds of maps. And each color signifies a different meaning. Like blue is a water or a level deviation, a large one. So there's a method of getting where. Green is loot. Red is impassable. Orange is lots of enemies, and yellow is not a huge threat.
So to be clear, you still have to fill in the blanks and use your imagination, but the Rubik's Cube acts as a randomizer to help give you ideas for room to room.
Yes, essentially. And I made like 3 different maps using this.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I was just experimenting with doing it, and I drew them all out. I can show you. I can maybe put them on the screen. I probably will.
Were you happy with the results?
Yeah. And I have them. They will be on the screen. Because I like them.
So it's funny that you bring up the Rubik's Cube map thing first, because while that was in the 5 Torches Deep rules, it's not something that is like necessary for that rule set, or it can easily be taken out and used in any RPG setting that uses like dungeons and stuff. Like you could easily like design dungeons for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, while also using this Rubik's Cube system to make those maps.
Yes.
Oh, this is a lot more round than I would have expected. Now you're going to have to definitely put this on the screen.
I said I would. But the idea being, the entrance is down here at the top left. I'll put little things. The river is the blue. This is the minimal damage. This is a flower patch. Is a.
I thought it was a treasure hoard.
No, it's an enemy. I'm very bad at drawing.
This hallway kind of looks like a penis.
That was not intentional, and I didn't realize it until now. This is like a whole
You see it
different
though,
thing.
can't you?
Shut up.
You'll never not see it anymore.
This is a frozen lake, because I remember playing White Plume Mountain, and there being a hot lake, and I want to do the opposite of that.
White Plume Mountain was a official adventure for
Yes.
Dungeons and Dragons
For
listeners.
like, 2nd edition.
Second edition. But did you play the 5th edition version?
I played whatever Alex made me play.
The 5th edition version. I think it was in oh, I don't remember which source book it was. It was a book that had a bunch of different like classic D&D adventures but remade for the newest edition. Like I ran Tomb of Horrors out of that book, which Tomb of Horrors terrible
Yes.
fucking dungeon.
I haven't read it myself or played it, but as I understand it, it's just bullshit.
It's just dumb. It's not even like clever bullshit. Like if it was at least clever, I'd forgive it for being unfair, but it is also just not clever.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about Tomb of Horrors. I wanted to talk about Five Torches Deep.
Yes, you made a good point, though, that this specific system that I brought up, is not required for this rule set.
It's just something that you kind of latched onto.
It's one of the things I latched onto. The other thing I latched onto is the monster builder.
Oh yeah?
And the idea of the monster builder, listeners, is that instead of having a pre-built monster that has all of its stats and everything made for you...
Yeah, in Dungeons and Dragons, you typically buy a book called the Monster Manual, which is literally just a list of like 100 or so different monsters and their stats that you can use in any of the games that you run.
Instead of that, you build it from scratch.
Yeah.
And they have a whole method of doing it. It's very intuitive. I loved it. And I loved the thing I liked about both of these systems inside of this rule set is that it's just simple.
Yeah.
And as a DM, I appreciate the ability to make my own, because if I want to just make a troll,
Yeah.
I can just make a troll. But if I wanted to find a troll in the monster manual, I have to look through all the trolls.
Yeah.
And pick
because
which
they usually
one.
have different types of trolls.
And then it's like, well, wait, which challenge rating are you in? And challenge rating is like the about approximately the level of your group.
Yeah,
that's
so you've
gonna
got
fight.
like a low-level character party, like they're all like level 1 or something like that. And you're like, well, I want them to fight a troll. I've got a story in mind where they fight a troll, but the troll that's in the monster manual, the stats are too
far
difficult.
too powerful.
So I can't make them fight this troll.
Or if I do, I have to tell them it's a troll, but then I have to like attach different stats, which makes a whole other problem.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it in this that I could just make everything from scratch. That way it can be my adventure.
It's a lot more freedom. The monster creator in the Fantasy Craft rule set was one of the things that made me endeared to that setting, that system way back when.
Yes.
But the difference, of course, between Fantasy Craft and D&D is that Fantasy Craft is actually far more complicated.
It's probably the most complicated.
Is that complicated might be the wrong word for it. It's just
Too much.
detailed. It's everything has lots.
You need to do too much.
You need to do too much.
I was remembering I wanted to run Fantasy Craft because Alex at the time when you were into it told me about it.
I love it. I loved it. I still do love it, but
And
I
he was
never
like-
want to play
I think you lent me one of the books at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was reading through it trying to figure out how I would make a campaign. And for the first step I came up with was how to create a god, and then I had to create like one small instance where they would walk into a castle, and that became a huge ordeal. And I think a lot of that was in my inexperience, but it really turned me off because it took me like 3 hours to get to that point.
Yeah, and in reality, running a Dungeons and Dragons or running any tabletop RPG, it shouldn't actually be complicated. It's a very simple thing. You just come up with a story, you improvise sometimes you have to, you have pre-planned ideas sometimes,
Yeah.
and the story happens just by the interaction with, the world that you've created as a DM and the players that their characters that they've created,
It's like I kind of want to talk about this with Silas, but it's like when you're imagining what D&D is versus what it actually is.
Yeah.
And when you're imagining it, you're thinking, I need to prepare so much stuff. I need to make sure that the storyline, I need to make sure that the characters, I need to think about all the relationships between the characters. When you're actually doing it, it's just you have a story in mind, and you, no matter what the characters do, you make that story happen.
Yeah.
And that's a very difficult thing to kind of grasp when you're starting.
I don't even want to really do that anymore, just because it's so hard to get that story to happen sometimes with the way players behave.
I just for me, it's like if I need them to talk to a person,
Mm-hmm.
and I need it to be a specific person for a specific reason, like they're ill, and the players need to talk to this person so they can get the information there. I set them up in the town.
Yeah.
I let them figure out, what they got to do next, how whatever hook I tell them about to get to that person, and I let them do whatever they want. But no matter what they do, it's going to lead back to that person.
Yeah.
Always.
I mean, that's pretty basic.
It's D&D Bonus 101, of course. But your point isn't wrong. It is very difficult sometimes when you're in much different setting to get them to do that.
Maybe it's because I focus a lot on dungeons and dungeon-like areas. I pretty much use the dungeon logic whenever I can, which is put them in a place, let them explore the place, let the stories happen in that place. So in a dungeon, they go to room, and they find whatever encounters are in those rooms, and they find treasures, and they find monsters, and, stuff happens.
Yes.
And the story evolves out of that. And if I were to put them in a city, I would probably just use the same logic, which is I would have the places in the city that they could go to, and the encounters in the city that could happen, and the monsters that they could fight, or, I don't know, mobsters or town guards or whatever city appropriate. And I would just try to keep that level of contained freedom, you can't do totally open world in a D&D setting. That's horribly impractical.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
But you can take a small area and you can give them free reign over that area, and that's how I like it done. That's how I think is the smartest way to do it.
See, I agree with you. It's just that's kind of what's happening in my current D&D game, which I have to talk about.
Yeah, the one with Silas. The one with hello.
Hello. His did I forget his name again? I think I did.
Silas's character?
I think it's the Midnight Doctor. I don't know what I said last time.
I have no idea either.
No, the Doctor of Night.
Oh.
That's what it actually is. I said Midnight Doctor last time.
I like the Midnight Doctor better.
Yeah. In that, GM's giving us as much freedom as we want.
Mm-hmm.
Lets us do whatever the heck we want.
And too much freedom?
That is, I think, my issue. I love the campaign. I'm excited to play tomorrow. And I'm going to tell you about what happened last week. But until then, we just have so much freedom. And it's I really have no goal associated with what he wants. The goal of the campaign is to get off the island. My character has no desire to do that at all. So I'm not working toward that goal.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a little better if, instead of giving my character the freedom to do what I wanted, he made what I wanted part of getting off the island.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say that he's doing a bad job.
See, you're talking about, the goal of getting off the island, and my own take on it would never be, I don't even want to give the players a goal. I'm just I'm going to have them a reason to be on the island, and then I'm going to let them do what they want on the island. If that means leave, that means leave, but otherwise I want them to do stuff on the island,
Mm-hmm.
So, that's the goal. Do stuff on the island.
Sure, if that is your goal, I guess, but that's not the goal in this instance.
I
You know what I mean?
try so hard not to, make my own prearranged stories. I latch way more onto, rather than stories, just, ideas. Onto characters, onto places. And I find that to be far more interesting. Again, the story is of what's happening at the table.
When you're DMing, that is the ideal. You don't come up with a story, you come up with an idea.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that was clear.
Well, it's not clear to a lot of, especially new Dungeons & Dragons
People
players.
who don't play Dungeons & Dragons have no idea. And I think that's my biggest problem with it this is my second biggest problem with it as a property.
Mm-hmm.
If you play Dungeons & Dragons for the first time, the first problem is going to be D&D.
Yeah.
It's complicated for someone who has no idea, who has no concept.
Even 5th edition, which is almost as simple as D&D has ever been.
It's the simplest. The only one maybe is 4th edition, and even then, it's you don't want to play 4th edition because it's not very good. But on top of that, it's still some stuff in there. 5th edition is so simple.
Yeah. Maybe we should just have a thing where we talk about the different editions of D&D.
But that's what I like so much about Five Torches Deep.
Is that it's simple.
It cuts away a lot of the fat, like skills.
Yeah.
You don't...
Explain skills in 5th edition for listeners, and then explain how it works in Five Torches Deep.
Of course. In 5th edition, you have a list of skills. Each skill is tied to one of your 6 attributes.
So, strength would be athletics.
Yes.
And
dexterity would be sleight of hand.
Is that a skill in 5th edition?
Yes.
Okay, I can't remember them all. There's less than ever, and I still can't remember them.
I know. Perception would be
Wisdom.
Wisdom, so on and so forth.
Bluffing would be charisma.
Yes, and then Constitution would be like. Is that the one that only has no strength? It's the only one's got one. I can't remember what Constitution would be.
I don't remember either.
Constitution's the other skill, the other attribute is the point.
Mm-hmm.
In Five Torches Deep.
There's a bunch of skills. There's only 6 attributes.
Yes. In Five Torches Deep, each class has skills. There are no other skills. You can attempt a skill that your class is not proficient in, but you don't get the bonuses. And that's it.
So what's an example of a skill?
Like sleight of hand.
So the rogue class. I don't remember Five Torches Deep as well.
The rogue class, yes.
Okay, the rogue has a sleight of hand skill.
Yes.
He can do them, and he's got a bonus just for being a rogue.
Yes, and anyone else can attempt them, but they're not going to be as good because he's the rogue.
Comparatively in D&D, you've got you have to pick the skills for each character, and each class has a skill list that you can choose from, but you can't have all of them.
Yes.
So you've got to choose ones you want, and sometimes you just aren't given enough skill points to get all the skills you want. Like, you think, well, I should be reasonably good at athletics, but I also want to be good at intimidating, and I also want to be good at bluffing, and I also want to be good at history or something like that. Like, these are all ideas I have for my character, but by nature of being a fighter, he should be good at athletics, you know?
Yes.
And that's, like, the limiting thing, where it's like, okay, well, the skills just, it's streamlined. It's not even streamlined. It's, how do I describe it?
In Five Torches Deep?
In Five Torches Deep, yeah. Or even just any simplified system. Yeah, minimalistic. That is a good way of putting it.
It gives it so that the players know it. Instead of the players having a long list of skills, some of them are good at, some of them are not, they know exactly what they're best at, and everything else is just,
yeah,
cement. I forget the term. Vegemite. Everything else is just Vegemite.
I'm not familiar with that term.
I don't know if it's a real term.
I like it, though.
I've heard it on podcasts, so.
Well, okay. I guess we're gonna be one of those podcasts that use Vegemite as a term.
Yep. Well, Vegemite is a thing. Vegemite's
I know
food,
what Vegemite is.
But, everything else is just lesser Vegemite.
Have you ever had Vegemite?
No, I've not.
It's okay.
Is it salty, or is that the other one?
It's very salty, but the trick is not to put a ton on. You just put a little bit. You just
tiny.
Put it on toast like butter, but probably less than Vegemite on your toast than you would put butter.
Anyway, Five Torches Deep. I love it. I genuinely think I like it more than Dungeons and Dragons. And I think if I'm gonna DM again, it's gonna be might be my main way of doing it.
So, should we talk about Knave, or do you really not want to open up that can of worms?
We can talk about Knave.
Well, Knave is another rule set.
Knave is even simpler.
Knave is like the simplest.
Yeah.
It's so simple that my older brother, plays more D&D than most people I know, but he literally ran a Knave game for my mom. Like someone who you would never think would go anywhere near a tabletop RPG, he was able to get her to play Knave, because that is how simple Knave is. It is for everybody.
It's amazing.
And it's funny because it's discovered by the most hardcore tabletop player.
And the most hardcore tabletop player loves it because it's what the first newest people should play, and they never do.
Yeah. Most people just play Dungeons and Dragons because that's the game they know.
One. That's the one everyone knows.
When really it's like, oh, well, you get the same experience. You get to make a fantasy hero, you get to go on to an adventure.
No.
What do you mean?
You don't make a fantasy hero. You make a knave.
Yeah, you do make a knave.
That's actually part of the point, is that you're not special.
Yeah.
In D&D, in 5th edition, to illustrate my point, in 5th edition, you are a hero. You are a fighter. You're an amazing thing.
You're a wizard. You're a
rogue.
A paladin.
In Knave, there are no classes and there are no races. You're just some dude.
They're a knave.
You're a knave. You have some items, and that's it.
And one of the things I love about Knave is, like, it's weird talking about this, because so many people, when they hear about, like, oh, in the very first edition of Dungeons & Dragons, you don't even, like, create your own character. You, like, randomly roll them up. Like, your stats are rolled randomly. The class you are is rolled randomly. Everything is random.
Yes.
And a lot of people would rather have the customization. where they would rather, no, I like the idea of being my charming rogue, or I like the idea of being a clumsy wizard, or something like that, or maybe a bizarrely intelligent fighter.
Yes.
You know, he's not a big dumb fighter like you would expect. He's like a clever fighter, and you don't get that if you randomly roll, because you don't know what you're going to get when you randomly roll. But on the other hand, when you randomly roll, you get crazy shit.
When you randomly roll, you have to develop a new character that not even you would have come up with.
Yeah, and you wind up... It's bizarre how attached you become to those random characters.
Yes, absolutely.
And they're so much more likely to die, too.
See, it's like, on the one hand, I love being Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
But
that's a character you came up with.
Yes, but I don't mind. I also love the character that I created in Knave.
Yeah.
Which became a wizard who got all of his spell books stolen.
Mm-hmm.
I could no longer cast spells, and I had to chase down the man who took them, and then I ended up killing him in a magical, amazing way. And that became a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
In that than Willy Wonka has been. Not to say that I don't, that I
love your Willy Wonka.
Of course,
campaign.
I just think that when I think about both, I think that one is more interesting because of that ending and all of the culmination of that.
Yeah. That's also Alex's expert DMing.
I was about to say part of that is because of Alex, who's amazing at DMing. Also, he recently told me that my character in that Knave game is an enemy in his current game.
Oh, he just used your character as an NPC?
Yes.
I love
mine
that.
And Sam's. We've started a cult.
That's wonderful.
Isn't it?
Man, Alex and his fucking cults.
Oh, well, actually, I'm pretty sure Sam wanted to make a cult.
Okay, I was thinking of Cosmic Encounter.
Oh. We cannot do that.
No, we're not doing that.
I was thinking we could end the podcast talking about one of the games that we play, the board games we play.
I don't think we'll have time for that. I've got so many different movies to talk about.
You're right. How long... Well, this is probably going to be 2 podcasts at this point.
Yeah, at this point, it probably will be.
So let's try...
We'll get Silas on the show eventually.
He's coming soon. Is there anything else I wanted to say about Five Torches Deep? Is a question that I should not have asked myself.
People who are interested in Dungeons & Dragons. Look up Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, but also look up Knave, and look up Five Torches Deep, and just, maybe play one of those before you play Dungeons & Dragons, and then play Dungeons & Dragons afterward.
What may qualify, actually? I know exactly the progression you should take.
Okay.
If you have never played Dungeons & Dragons before, and you don't really have much of a concept of it, if you can't find someone who has, find someone who's willing to DM, have them run a Knave game for you.
They might not be familiar with Knave. Most people aren't.
Most people aren't, but Knave is so easy to understand.
It's easy to look up. It's easy to get your hold of. It's like a rule set that you can print out,
And you can attach it to anything you've already made, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's what Alex did.
Yeah.
So, if they're willing, do that. Play Knave first, then play Five Torches Deep, then play D&D. Because then you'll have a real culmination of what Dungeons & Dragons will be like, and you'll be able to fully prepare. Because again, Five Torches Deep has classes and races, which Knave doesn't. It gives you that ability to be amazing without making it the focus.
Five Torches Deep is the perfect middle option. Even the name Five Torches was specifically to imply its purpose, which was to be a mixture of the simplified games that we like, but also D&D 5th edition. That's the 5 part. It's you like 5th edition ideas, you like OSR simple rule ideas, we're going to try to combine the best of both.
Say what OSR is.
OSR is old school Renaissance. Man, that's another can of worms you just opened up. We didn't need to explain it.
No, you needed to specify the...
There's a lot of new rule sets and there's a big community, a big D&D community that is focused around kind of recapturing the magic of the first edition of Dungeons & Dragons, the whole old school style. And that's where we get into those very simple rules, randomized characters, stuff like that. Some of them take it to extremes, some of them are much more approachable. But as I've gained more and more experience playing D&D and D&D-like games, I appreciate the OSR, the old school approach, more and more.
I just appreciate simplicity.
Yeah.
Simplicity for me is every time I've DM'd new people.
Yeah, same.
And it's if you're going to DM with a new person, getting them something that's so easy. For example, the character pages, the character sheets.
Yeah.
For 5 Torches Deep is half a page.
Yeah,
That'd be a third
compared to like 5th edition, which is like minimum 2 pages.
at least.
And then before that, like, was it 3rd edition that could have like up to 6 pages for a character sheet? It's like, no, God, no.
It's 2 for D&D 5th edition. It's 2 to 3.
Yeah, it's 3 if you have spells.
If it's like Pathfinder, it's like 4.
Oh God.
I forgot about Pathfinder.
It's Fantasy Craft had goddamn 6 pages.
Fantasy Craft.
Mind you, the nice thing about Fantasy Craft is that it had like all the rules on the character sheet. So because the game was so complicated, and you needed to know, like, oh, if I want to trip an enemy, how do I do that? Well, that's written right there on your character sheet. Because in any other game, you'd say, just roll a die. And in this one, it's like, well, no, you're going to actually use your sleight of hand skill versus their balancing skill. I'm like, no, stop. Fantasy Craft, please, stop.
Please stop is how I would describe my Fantasy Craft experience.
I love Fantasy Craft. I'll talk about Fantasy Craft next week, maybe.
Right now, we're going to talk about one of the board games that we really like.
Yeah, we mention board games a lot, so it's probably important to establish that board games are a thing.
I think we're going to attempt to, at the end of an episode, talk about the board games.
Why is that?
I just think it makes the most sense.
Okay.
Just because we love, there's so many board games.
Well, should I talk about the movies I watched first, or?
I was thinking we could split the episode in half.
Okay, make it like a 2-parter.
Yeah, we take the episode, we take the conversation about the board games. After that, we cut it in half, and then we do the next episode, which is which we talk about more about your movies.
Man, we're being so efficient. We're producing like 2 episodes a week now.
I really am interested in hearing your what was the one you were talking about that you're really interested in, the Guardian? No, not Guardians. I've forgotten again.
What, video games?
No, the movie that you were really
Clash of the Titans.
That one.
Yes.
I wanted to hear about that.
Clash of the Titans is a great movie.
But I also want to talk about Innis.
Innis.
Or Inish, if
Inish.
you prefer.
Inish is how I think it's actually pronounced. It's not easy to tell when you look at it.
No.
I'll talk about Inish. I love Inish.
It's spelled I-N-I-S.
It is it the native Irish word, I think, for
Gaelic.
island? Gaelic?
Yeah,
Not Celtic?
I'm pretty sure.
It's not Gaelic mythology, it's Celtic mythology. I think it's just native Irish, because Irish is a
No.
language.
What?
It's
I'm
a
almost
language.
certain it's Gaelic.
It might be. It wouldn't make any sense for it to be Gaelic to me, though.
What's Gaelic then to you? Because my understanding is that Gaelic is ancient Irish.
It might be. I mean, there's the ancient Celts. These are different tribes on Ireland. I am probably revealing how little I know about European history.
I gotta look it up now. I'm sorry.
Sam would know this. Sam knows all about this kind of stuff. Man just will sit there listening to a History of England podcast for hours on end. Like, why would any American want to know that much about the history of England?
It's ancient Irish.
Yeah, it's an ancient language spoken in Ireland, but that doesn't mean it's literally ancient Irish.
Well, it means what you're talking about. It means island.
Okay, cool.
My point is that I thought it was a Gaelic game. Don't they say that in the Shut Up and Sit Down review?
Maybe Celtic and Gaelic are the same thing. I was under the impression they were different.
Celtic, I always assumed was Swedish.
No, Celtic is not Swedish. That is 100%.
Oh, no, Scottish.
Maybe?
My understanding was that Celts were Scottish, Gaelic was Irish. This has gone beyond the talk of the board game.
Damn, how do we fucking do this? Weren't the Scottish like the Pictish?
Oh, god damn it, I don't know.
There's so many. There's actually so many, like, ancient civilizations that all, like, warred over the same island. That's the coolest thing about Celtic mythology is that part of it kind of, like, is the history, is their, like, actual history, that they've magicked up with fancy stuff. Like, the whole, Tuatha, I'm pronouncing it wrong, it's spelled Tuatha De Anon. It's probably pronounced more like Tua De Anon. Alex would know because he actually studies this kind of thing.
Yes.
But they took the island from the Fomerians, who took the island from the Firbolg, and probably pronouncing all of this wrong too. Celtic words are really hard to pronounce. But, like, historically, those were probably, like, actual, like, people who lived there and wars that they had between one another, you know? And
Okay.
I love that kind of stuff.
I'm looking on Board Game Geek. It says in the description, Innis is a game deeply rooted in Celtic history and lore,
Okay, that's what I said.
which is probably where you got it, and it means you're probably right because Board Game Geek is usually correct.
Well, yeah, because it's written by nerds.
Yes, who have nothing better to do than to weigh the box of the game.
We're not. You do realize weight has nothing to do with literal weight, right?
What do you mean?
When they say weight under the description of the games on Board Game Geek, they're not talking about how much the box weighs. It's how complex the game is. It's a term.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, it says a complexity rating right there.
Yeah, but it'll say it in weight, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's just underneath the weight is what I was saying.
Yeah. Nobody weighs these games.
No, I could have sworn they do.
No, I don't think so.
We're getting way off topic right now.
Hey, you wanted to talk about board games, but
I wanted to talk about
Innis.
Innis.
Waffle Hour.
I want to talk about Innis, and you're talking about Celtic and Gaelic.
It's a Celtic board game, and that is one of the reasons I love it.
Tell me about it.
So Innis was one of the first serious board games I got into. Actually, the way it happened is while I was living in the city, we'll call it, because I don't like people knowing exactly where I am or where I was at.
Of course.
There was a local board game shop that seemed really cool, and my roommate and I were watching lots and lots of the Shut Up and Sit Down YouTube channel.
Yes.
And Innis was one that they had recently reviewed at the time. This was in 2017 when the game released, and I said, that game looks fucking cool. So my roommate went out and bought it for me as a gift. I think it was a Christmas gift, actually.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. I didn't know that part of it.
Yeah, he's a great person. There was a bit of a fallout between us. We've made up since then.
You don't have to get into your personal here.
Sorry, can't help it. So Innis is a board game. It is, I believe, classified as area control. Sometimes referred to as dudes on a map, but when people say that, they're usually meaning games that are kind of similar to Risk.
Yes.
In that you've got soldiers and territories, and you've got to capture them from other players. But, like most games that we describe as being like Risk, what we mean is that it's significantly better than Risk, because it's not like Risk at all.
Yeah, we have a huge problem with, like, every game we play virtually, we can go, it's like Risk, but better.
Well, I think Territorial Control are probably the genre of board game I like the most.
Same?
It's the ones I gravitate towards.
Oh, we have so many.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I want to always diversify, but then I'm like, yeah, but Cyclades looks really good.
And Ethnos.
Ethnos is another weird one.
Yes, it is. So, what you do in Innis?
So, do you mean like the victory conditions? It's hard to describe a board game over a podcast.
Very.
Obviously, there's people who do that.
Well, we're gonna have to try because this is a huge part. This is like how we became friends, basically.
Yeah, it's literally just a weekly board gaming thing we did.
So we really need to explain what we mean.
That board games are important.
Yes, and we're gonna be explaining them. So we're gonna have to do our best.
So one of the coolest things about Innis is that unlike a lot of territorial control games, it's pretty amicable in that there's a lot of sharing territories between players.
Yes.
You can waltz right in. You can use the conquest attack card or whatever you want to call it to invade another person's territory, but you don't have to fight. Both players can just agree to just not fight.
Yes.
And
you can just
live
go,
there
hey,
in harmony.
let's be friends. Yeah, I'm cool with that.
And this is reflected in the victory conditions where, rather than like Risk where you have to control every territory in order to win, this is a lot simpler. They've got 3 different conditions, and one of them is just to be in 6 different places, and that's whether you control them or not.
As long as you're in them, you get a victory condition.
Yep, you win the game, so to speak.
The
other 2, there's one that's there's a building called the Sanctuary. It's like a church that you can build it as part of your turn. And if you have 6 of these, then you win. Whether you just have to be in territories that contain these sanctuaries. So if you build 6 of them in one place and you're in that place, then boom, you win. But if someone else is sharing that space with you, because you can share it amicably, then they win too. And you got a tie situation. And then the wonderful tie. The third victory condition is the most...
I'm going to try.
You're going to try?
I'm going to try.
It's complicated.
Because I won with this last time.
I hate you for that, by the way.
The third is the most complicated to understand, especially without visuals.
So you can be the one controlling a territory. If you have the most guys in there, that means you're the chieftain
Yes.
of that territory.
And if you are the chieftain over 6 enemy players, meaning you have more
Enemy units.
enemy units, meaning you have more pieces in that place than they do, then you would meet a victory condition.
Yeah, so if you have 7 guys and they have 6 guys, that's winning right there. Or if you have 2 different territories where you each have 4 guys and they each have 3 guys, then that's a victory condition. Or even if it's one place and you have 3 guys and 3 other players each have 2 guys, 2, 4, 6,
Yes.
then that's winning. It's not something that's easy to control since it's dependent on the other player, but it's kind of like a balancing kind of rule set, I'd say.
It makes it so that if someone's getting too advanced, you can just throw points around.
Yeah.
You can start moving your guys in situations where you'll be lording over everyone, and then all of a sudden it becomes they're in 6 different places, but you have 4 points based off of lording over 4 people, and you have 2 deeds, which count as other points.
Yeah, deeds are the special wild card points that you can earn through special actions.
Yes. I hope we did that well.
We did it terribly.
I think I'm going to blame you a little.
Yeah, it's my fault.
Because, I tried, I said it, and then you added on all the extra.
It's really hard when someone's doing their best to explain the rules, not to add in your own ideas there. Alex is the worst at it.
Oh, Alex is terrible at that.
And he is completely oblivious to how bad he is. He fights me on it every time.
Yeah, I think he does that with Cosmic Encounter a lot. He tries to give examples of stuff that we've done, and it's that's great, but they've never played it before.
Yeah. So...
Love him, though.
Yeah.
He's listening to the first one right now, so why I wanted to specify that.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
He's one of our 12 listeners, or is he the 13th?
I think he's the 13th, actually.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, Anish, what else do we want to talk about, and why we love this game so much?
We could talk about the card system.
Okay. So, yeah. In... the one thing that I truly, truly love about Inish, why it's one of my absolute favorite games, is that it just seems to be the pinnacle of elegance in terms of game design. Everything that's in the game works exactly as exactly as much as it needs to, and no less, and in tandem with everything. Everything works together. You couldn't take any part out, or it would ruin it. You wouldn't be able to add much to it without really... You wouldn't improve anything by adding it, which I think is kind of proven by the expansion to a certain extent. The good part of the expansion is just adding the ability with more players.
Point being, the cards in this represent this very, very well.
Yeah. The gameplay is pretty simple. Compared to a game like Risk, where you're given a certain order of actions, where first you move your guys, then you do your attacks, then you reinforce, blah, blah, blah. This is, you have a hand of cards, and your cards are your actions. One is the attack card. One is the build a building card. One is the have a party, a feast, a festival card. I love that one.
One of them is let's make it so that no clashes can happen in a certain area.
You want to bring this up so you can brag about your victory.
Oh, I do.
And that's it. You play one of these cards, and that's your turn. And at the beginning of every round, you draft out the cards. Everyone trades the cards around until they get a hand that they are mostly happy with. And then during the round, you play the cards in turns. And then when no one else has anything to do, then the round is over and you redraft the cards. So you see the same actions over and over and over again.
So when you play with just 4 players, you understand and know the cards almost within the first 2 games.
Yeah.
You know every card. You know that certain cards, like the Geist, for example, which will cancel another person's card.
Yeah, that's what it does.
You have to think about that every time you're playing. You have to think about when you're putting stuff down, if someone was going to Geist that, why would they?
Yeah, there's always okay, this is the one thing I want to do this round. I want to start a fight so that I can get at least one kill and use the effect to get this thing. You get the idea. And you're like, well, this is the one thing I don't want to be Geist, so how can I draw out that Geist?
Or force someone else to draw it out.
Or maybe you're the one holding it, so no one can stop you.
Yes.
Or maybe it's not even dealt out that round, because sometimes there's always one card that isn't in use.
Yes.
It's
very it's very much a strategy game, but it's a strategy game in the most amazing and fun way, which is that it's so considered to what you want to do as opposed to what everyone else wants to do.
The funny thing is when I think a lot about like the strategy behind the game, I think about it a lot in terms of like collectible card games. Like when people talk about Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone or something like that, and they talk about board state and there's a specific term they use for like having options in your hand, having a full hand of cards, and therefore getting more, like, you're stronger
Utility?
for it. Maybe. I can't remember. I don't play collectible card games at all. Like, at all.
I play them, but I don't know.
Maybe it was just called Advantage or something like that.
I don't know.
But yeah, one of the cheekiest things you can do in Inish is that you don't have to play a card every turn. You can just pass, and that doesn't preclude you out. You can just, jump in when it's your turn again and play a card then. So a lot of new players will want to play all their cards because all their cards do cool stuff, and they want to do cool stuff every round, and you just sit there with your full hand of cards waiting for everyone to be out of actions, and then you play everything you do without them being able to stop you. But on the other hand, you can lose that advantage because if everyone passes by not playing a card, then the round is over, you lose all the cards in your hand, they get redealt and out again. So if someone did something that round and you did nothing, then that person just got a little bit of an advantage over you. Though that's not something that's ever happened because I've only ever played with people who want to play all the cards in their hands.
New and old players.
It's
odd.
tricky. You want to play the cards. It's fun. It's fun to play the cards.
Well, I'm the same as you. I don't play. I wait. I've always waited. Every time we play, I think I tell them you guys should pass.
You should pass more.
You should pass more so that we all have to throw our cards away.
And that's why most of the time the game is between you and I, with Aiden randomly winning or something like that.
Or Jake.
Or Jake. Jake wins a lot.
Jake wins. He's really good at strategy games. He loves RimWorld.
Yeah, Jake is just a deeply clever person.
Yes,
he is
the way to describe it.
A silent titan.
Good dude. We should also talk about combat. Combat is very simple.
I love it.
In this game, if you use the conquest card to attack someone else, and they decide they do want to attack, whoever attacked first is the instigator. They are the first one to do it. They say, "I'm attacking you." The other person decides to either remove a unit off the board or remove a card.
Yeah, they lose one of the cards in their hands.
And it's a very important rule, because losing cards is a lot worse than losing people.
And that's another one of those things that new players don't really understand right away, because they're like, no, this is a strategy game. I gotta have soldiers. I don't want to lose my soldiers.
Yes, it's kind of a problem. It's one of the reasons I would like it if we played with people who played it, but I also want people who haven't played it to love it.
Yeah, I mean they definitely learn it after a while.
Yes.
And there are definitely those situations where my strategy is hinging on this fight. I can't lose the fight. I have cards I never planned on using in the first place. Time to burn those cards. Speaking of, so this is where you get to the point where you only wanted to talk about our last game, where you won in 20 minutes?
I'm not gonna
10
lie.
minutes?
I love this.
A single round.
Let me clarify this.
Let me clarify how fucking annoying this is.
I love this game, and I love telling people about it, and I wish more people would play it. I think this should be what replaces Risk in your house, in my opinion. I think it's much better than Risk in every way, and I think even if you don't know games that well, it's worth learning.
I think if I were to introduce someone who doesn't know much about board games and say, okay, well, this is what you should be playing instead of Risk, I'd use Small World.
Maybe.
Because it's casual and it's fun. It's very obvious how much better it is than Risk, because it's so similar and so much better.
I just think that Innis is just a better game.
It is a better game. It's just a much, much better game.
And I think that you're not wrong. Small World is closer to Risk, which I guess we'll talk about next week. Or maybe at the end of the next podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But
which we'll record this week.
I think that Innis is a better game for people of all ages to understand, because it gives them a lot broader perspective.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just me thinking socially about it. The point is, I really like the game and I love it. I also won last game within the first 20 minutes, and I really want to talk about that on the public forum.
Okay, so I am It's been a little bit. I'm getting a hazier on the details, and obviously I wasn't as enthralled by this victory as you were, so I haven't...
Or Jake. Jake also loved it.
Well, was it Jake that I was fighting with? Because
No, yes,
that's what
was.
it was hinged on. It hinged on the fact that me and another player, me and Jake, who we played with, were kind of like dueling it out as rivals. We wanted the same territory. We kept on fighting over the same territory. We kept on building up our armies in that territory.
Yes. It was a huge fight. And at one point...
Well, it wasn't a fight.
At one point, Jake puts down a token. It's the Fifi token. The Fifi token, as I said, makes it so that there can be no clashes in this place, no matter what cards are played.
No fights.
So...
What's interesting is that it just makes it so the fights don't happen. Everything else, if you have a card that lets you move into a territory and fight, you still get to move in there.
Yes.
It's just no fight happens.
And at the time, Jake had 3 people in there, and Ben had also 3 people in there.
And Jake had put that down so that I would not fight with him.
I was 1 token away, 1 space away, and I had 5 people in there. I played a card to move into there, and I instantly became unstoppable.
Yeah.
Because I waited until everyone else had played their cards. We also played with Silas, who played the Geis.
Yeah, he wasted it on something.
Well, he was going to waste it on something, and then you told him not to, and then he wasted it on something else.
Yeah, Silas was a new player. I told him. I mean, he played it like once before.
Yes, but
I
he didn't
advised him, and then it didn't pay off. He was the only one that could have prevented your inevitable victory, but
Yes.
he wasted it.
Well, he didn't know. That's not his fault. I don't blame him at all. I'm just pointing out that he had the Geis. You didn't have it.
The game, and especially what we're talking about, was that way you won by taking advantage of that particular situation that happened.
I was going to bring up, I think, what you're talking about now. Go ahead.
I was going to talk about how card games, how they have tons of different interacting mechanics that you can't always expect, but they always combine in clever ways.
Not what I was going to talk about, but go ahead.
What were you going to talk about?
I was just going to say that I basically utilized the fact that we were playing with 3 people who really don't know the game as well as you or I.
Yeah.
And I kind of exploited that and just beat it. It wasn't even entirely intentional. I just saw the opportunity and took it.
Yeah, but that's the game. Excuse me.
I kind of felt bad for Nick.
Oh yeah, I forgot we were playing with him.
Yeah, he didn't
He's
get it.
played before though. He's had good experiences playing Inish before.
He didn't have the chance to play it as much this time because I just immediately won. We put it away.
The first time I played with Nick, I also played with his friend Alex. Let's call him Alex N, because it's another. We know how many Alexes? 4 or 5?
10? I don't know. You know a million Bens. You know a million Alexes.
It's very frustrating.
On your
But
2 other
anyway,
Ryans.
We played with my brother Nick and his friend. I had a 3-player game with him, and if I were to recommend Inish, I'd say start with a 3-player game.
Yeah.
2-player game changes too much of the rules, but it scales really well with how the game works. I think lots of games are really only good with this number of players, or at best with this number of players, whereas Inish it's 3, 4, or if you have the expansion 5 players, all fantastic.
Yes.
I like the 5-player because the thing about 4 and 5-player games is that they add more cards.
Immediately off topic. Let's go back to the 3-player thing you were telling people.
I'm just saying it's the best way to experience the game early on.
Yes.
It's got less advanced cards in it because you get more cards with more players. Things that would compensate
It's a good start
for more interactions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the easiest way to experience why it's good. I guess I don't really have much put thought into it. I just had this experience. It was a good experience. I want other people to have that experience.
I thought you were talking about Nick.
Well, yeah, but I introduced it to him, and that was a good experience for me, that he had a good experience.
Okay, good. I'm glad. But yeah, it wasn't. I didn't just want to bring it up because of that. If I wanted to do that, I would have just told you what happened and then explained everything after.
Yeah. So, what I was saying before is just the way cards interact and the mechanics. It's a lot like how collectible card games work, where there are certain synergies between certain cards that you can get and certain things that might happen, which makes every game feel different.
Yes.
And there's an element of randomness involved. In Inish, it's not through card draw, it's through card drafting, which means it's less random. But it's the good kind of random where it just makes the games different. Another thing that's random about the game is the territories that are there. Like there's different regions. The map gets built out as you play. There's a certain card that lets you explore new regions, which means you put a new tile onto the board, and that's a new region, a new territory to play with. And the different territories will have like a few different mechanics associated with them. Like the mountain is really hard to attack.
Yes.
Or the forest lets you reuse the red cards, I think is what it does. And the one game I had, we had the stone circle from the beginning of the game, and that one lets you sacrifice your soldiers in order to get red cards, because it's like a kind of a druidic human sacrifice kind of thing.
Red cards are like really good cards you have.
Yeah, there's green cards, which are the ones that we deal out every turn. Red cards are like super powerful versions that you get more rarely. But this game was really cool, because we built the capital from the start of the game on top of this territory, and everyone was getting tons and tons of red cards, and there was a bunch of other tiles that interacted with the red cards. So it was just a gonzo game compared to other games I've had, which are very, very tight and strategic, and maybe they're built entirely around like the iron mine region, which gives you a big advantage in fights, and everyone's fighting over the iron mine because it's so good to have the iron mine.
It's a very amazing game.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. Would recommend.
Absolutely.
But it is not our favorite game.
No.
We mentioned before about Twilight Imperium. We're not going to talk about it now.
We can't.
Just as we didn't talk about it then.
Twilight Imperium is a massive game, and it's going to take a long podcast, and we're probably going to need to do it twice.
Yeah, we're going to mess it up the first time.
Definitely. We're probably going to need to have it out.
But yeah.
It's not complicated. It's complex.
What's the distinction there? What do you mean?
Complex is... God, you've called me out. I know there's a difference. I just don't remember what it is.
I thought you said something really clever, and I wanted you to clarify, and then here we are. I just kind of saying something clever by accident.
Yeah, well, that happens to me every day of my life. It's something that I've heard a lot. It's not complicated. It's complex. But explaining it is annoying when I can't give an example, and I don't want to give an example because I don't want the explanation too long.
The one thing I'll say about Inish over Twilight Imperium is that Inish, as I said before, is elegant.
It's elegant.
Twilight
it's
Imperium
small.
is not elegant.
Twilight Imperium also takes all day.
It takes all goddamn day to play.
A lot of people may hear that and go, "Oh, a couple hours."
Inish can take a long time too. One of the biggest complaints for board game fans about Inish is that the recommended play time, it's like an hour or two or something like that. Oh, the board game's right next to me. It's 60 minutes, it says.
It's a lie.
Dead wrong. Just a lie.
Like,
the more players, especially, the longer these games
for the
get.
record, my win was a fluke.
Yeah, that was what, a 10-minute game?
I think it was 20 minutes. It was a complete accident.
It was one round.
It was one round, and in like, that's so not indicative of games you'll have in this. It's so far away.
I mean, I've seen like 4 or 5 hour long games.
Yes, one of the ones that we had when we first started took like all night. We were there till midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it takes a long time. Twilight Imperium can legitimately take 8 hours.
It can take more than 8 hours.
It can. Innis will at most take 5 if you're
At most.
really.
And that's when you get, like, you have 4 hyper-competitive players.
who know the game, and on top of that, like even at 4 hours, that's going to be the point where you get fatigued and you're like, I kind of don't want to do this anymore.
Maybe the best part of the expansion is introducing a rule specifically to keep games from getting too long.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only really necessary in 5-player games or like really intense 4-player games that happens. I guess we should explain in Inish, we talked about all those victory conditions and how people can be both winning at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Inish, instead of having like a secondary method of winning, like maybe whoever has the most points would normally win, but if 2 players have the most points and the person who has the most money, that's how like a lot of other games would do it. In Inish, it's like, no, if someone's tied, you just keep playing the game.
Until you have another victory condition that you meet.
Yeah, either you make sure that other person is no longer meeting that condition by pummeling them in submission, or you somehow get 2 victory conditions at once.
Wasn't there a point when Jake D had 3?
All 3?
I think
Was that his
happened.
first game?
No. I think that was like his 3rd. I don't know if it was Jake D. I know
Oh,
someone...
wait.
No, you're thinking of Jake M.
Okay, yeah. The one that we were playing with last time, the one who was just
No, I'm talking
bizarrely
about
good at strategy games.
The other one that we haven't played with in a couple of years.
We know 2 different Jakes,
Jake D.
as well as 5 Bens and
He's
6
the one
Alexes.
he's the one who came over with Jesse a lot.
Yeah. Oh, that was a game I didn't play.
Yes, and didn't he meet like 3 different conditions?
He just won every game he played for no reason. The man is so unassuming, and yet he's just so...
No, he's really good at strategy. He's amazing at them.
Yeah, but you wouldn't expect that because he's just so quiet. I guess
the
maybe
Jakes.
that's why you would expect that.
It's the Jakes.
The Jakes. Jakes are just good at strategy games.
That's how it is.
That was my best finish experience because I didn't play the game. I helped everyone who was brand new at it. And I would just walk around the table and I would look at everyone's hands. I would advise them each on the actions that they should take that would be best for them. And I would also just shout shit over the table to get everyone riled up against one another.
Yes, you did it a lot. It was a very good game.
It was enormously satisfying. It was almost like DMing.
I think that was one of the ones that took us till midnight.
That was a super long game, and it would not have been that long if I didn't keep on telling people how to get into ties to keep their opponents from winning, or just riling them up. And Alex especially, he had never won a game of Inish. He wanted to win so badly. He was just getting exhausted because he refused to give up.
I forgot about that. He's definitely won since.
He's won since, but it took him forever to win a game.
Well, to be fair, he was comparing a lot of the games he just played with you. That was 2-player.
Yeah.
And those were kind of against him because you were trying to create a strategy guide at the time.
Yeah, because I loved it so much I wanted to write the book on it.
Mm-hmm.
Which it turns out, all of my research on the games really only worked for 2-player games. I mentioned, the game scales really well, 3-player, 4-player, 5-player, but the 2-player one, it's still a good game, but it's a different game.
Yeah. So yeah, yes. One of the best board games ever. If you're into board games and you don't already have it, I don't know how you can say you're into board games. If you're not into board games, get it.
If you are into board games and you happen to be a fan of Board Game Geeks, the website, which it's like the popular website amongst board game players, but if you just go by that, I feel Inish is criminally underrated.
Absolutely.
They don't even have it in their top 100. I think that's just wrong.
I don't even consider their lists as a thing. Because their
it's
community
just them
is
talking. It's just everyone rates their games, and that's just a collaborative ranking.
I think it's just a lot of people really like legacy games, but that's a different topic.
It's not just legacy games that get higher up.
Mostly, most of them, Gloomhaven.
I'm sure because Inish has slowly been moving up and up on that rankings list, but it's something that I feel if it had more attention. The problem is it came out in 2017. And that was the year that one of the biggest board game Kickstarter successes ever came out, and that was Scythe.
Yes.
And Scythe is probably the one we should talk about next week.
Yeah.
If we talk about a board game. But, spoiler alert, Scythe is a good game that I don't like.
I do like it.
But I think you might agree with me when I say it's a bit overrated.
Absolutely. 100%.
Especially if we're talking about Inish, which is kind of similar.
I think we just got lucky when we got games. A lot of the times, I think we just get the ones that are really good, but not necessarily highly rated.
I mean, I do I watch a lot of Shut Up and Sit Down.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone wants to get into board gaming, just watch that channel because it's a great channel, and they just tell you all the good games and they tell you why they're good.
Yeah, but they don't say all of them. That's my only problem.
They finally reviewed Wingspan, which is the game that everybody loves. They had a very interesting take on it.
All right. Should we sign off now?
Sign off. Do we have trademark sign-offs?
No, I just assumed we would be ending this episode and continuing after.
Yeah, we'll just start immediately recording the next episode because I want to talk about Clash of the Titans.
Okay, well, I guess...
So, next week.
Next week, yes.
Next week on... What's the name of our podcast again? The Waffle Hour. Shut up.
You love that name so much.
I do like it. It's just, you get a brain fart kind of when you're
Next
doing
week
a thing.
on the Waffle Hour.
Next week on the Waffle Hour.
Clash of Titans.
The Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans.
It's the name of a movie. I love. It's a name of a movie that I love.
Scythe.
Scythe. We gonna talk about Scythe? Oh yeah, I did already say we're gonna talk about Scythe.
Maybe even Doom Eternal. Who's to say?
Yeah, I want to hear. I have a lot to say about Doom Eternal. Even if you're the one who's been playing it lately,
I know.
I've got opinions.
I know that we will have the discussion. It's mostly gonna be you talking again, which is fine because I just don't have as much to say because I haven't gotten as into it as I could.
Okay, so, that's
Bye.
it.
Bye.
Goodbye, listeners.
I don't know why we're saying goodbye because we're doing that conversation thing. When the music's gonna play us out. I forgot.
I like to keep on talking